So we'll call our workshop meeting to order. So this evening we'll have our invocation by Pastor Paul Mixon and then Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. White. So we do have a few changes for this evening's agenda. First, we have added item 7.25, purchase and sale agreement of real property in Baker, Florida, and authorization to advertise for a public hearing. Added item 7.26, Chattahoochee High School course code adoption for the 2023-2024 school year. Then that brings us to Section 3, recognitions. We have none of those tonight. But Section 4, we do have 4.1, appointment of Assistant Principal 2, 10-month to Davidson Middle School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. That would bring us to Section 5, public comment, agenda items only. That's our blue card version. And Section 6, committee and staff reports, workshop only. Section 7 then, consent agenda. 7.1 will be approval of the consent agenda. 7.2, approval of the minutes of the workshop meeting of July 24, minutes of the regular meeting of July 24, 2023. 7.3, appropriation of District 1 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Shalimar Elementary School for classroom playground equipment in the amount of $1,424.97, presented by Dr. Lamar White. 7.4, appropriation of District 2 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Destin Elementary School for an outside wall wrap in the amount of $16,396, presented by Marty Gardner. 7.5, appropriation of District 2 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Antioch Elementary School for clear touch panels in the amount of $6,648, presented by Marty Gardner. 7.6, budget amendment number 10, fiscal year 2022-2023, presented by Julie Perry. 7.7, monthly financial statement for June 23, presented by Julie Perry. 7.8, invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Julie Perry. 7.9, school donations, presented by Julie Perry. 7.10, addendum to the agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and CAV Group Incorporated, presented by Julie Perry. 7.11, RFQ 24-22 N2Y LLC, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.12, tag on bid purchase over $50,000, Salient Healthcare LLC, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.13, tag on bid purchase over $50,000, Train, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.14, renewal of tag on bid ITB 3872AH, cafeteria, small wares, and small equipment, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.15, exempted purchase over $50,000, service agreement number 24-60, Connect ASL Inc., presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.16, exempted purchase over $50,000, service agreement number 24-61, Modern Therapeutics LLC, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.17, exempted purchase over $50,000, Sunbelt Staffing, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.18, renewal of fuel purchasing agreement between Baker Fire District and the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, presented by Vince Wyndham. 7.19, agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and Okaloosa County Comprehensive Head Start, submitted by Kathy Ard. 7.20, back to work contracts between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and school to work providers to provide career experience opportunities to eligible students at Silver Sands and Richburg schools, presented by Amy Bowles. 7.21, School Affiliation Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and Beachside Pediatrics Associates, PA, for the Practical Nursing Program at Okaloosa Technical College, presented by John Williams. 7.22, Modification for the 2023-2024 Dental Services Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and the Children's Volunteer Health Network, presented by Terry Schroeder. 7.23, Okaloosa County School District 2023-2024 Pupil Progression Plan, presented by Jeff Palmer. 7.24, Approval of Okaloosa County School District bus routes for the 2023-2024 school year, presented by Jay McGinnis. 7.25, Purchase and Sale Agreement for Real Property in Baker, Florida, and authorization to advertise for a public hearing, presented by Dr. Bill Smith. 7.26, Choctawhatchee High School Course Code Adoption for the 2023-2024 school year, presented by Stephanie Gills. That brings us to Section 8, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 8.1, Information Only, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Lee Hale. 8.2, Information Only, Deferred Retirement Option Program, presented by Lee Hale. 8.3, Request to allocate Route Coordinator, 1 year only, presented by Lee Hale. 8.4, Proposed Fiscal Year 2023-2024 Salary Schedule for Substitute and Temporary Personnel, presented by Julie Perry. 8.5, Out of Field Report for the 2023-2024 school year, presented by Sharon Duran.
I have a question about that one.
Okay.
May I ask Ms. Duran?
Absolutely.
Okay. I noticed that on that, there was one particular school that you're showing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they all had the same deficit, the out of field. Is that just because we have a shortage in getting people with that?
If I'm recalling, is it a deficit for ESOL?
Yes.
It's most likely it's because they did not complete their requirement for last year in a timely fashion, and so they have either done it towards the end of the summer when we don't have record of it yet, or they're going to work on it ASAP.
Okay, so you expect that to be cleared up
Yes,
pretty quickly? Yeah.
that one gets cleared up pretty easily.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Mhm.
Just unusual you have that many in one
Yeah.
school with the same thing, yeah,
May I?
certainly.
And one other explanation, Ms. Ivanchik, as you recall, when the legislature several years ago came out with the ESOL hourly requirement, sometimes it takes some of our new hires a little bit longer to become in field in ESOL, although they do remain compliant. So compliant versus out of field is a different conversation, but as you know, we do report the out of field as they are working on that along the way. And just for your information as well, the out of field report is going to be updated as it comes in from the schools, and so there may be little pockets here and there as the schools report them instead of one big list at one time.
Right,
So.
okay, yeah, thank you. Mhm.
All right, 8.6, Employment Separations, presented by Lee Hale. 8.7, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Lee Hale. 8.8, Employee Transfers, presented by Lee Hale. 8.9, Employee Suspension, presented by Lee Hale. And 8.10, Leave Without Pay, presented by Lee Hale. Any comments, questions? All right, 9 would be discussion agenda. We haven't had anything moved to that area. And 10, construction program owners representatives business.
We have a meeting right after this workshop, and I should have a detailed report tonight. So.
Great, we'll look forward to it. 11, attorney's business.
There's 2 items this morning, Madam Chair. The board approved a couple of weeks ago a services contract with Lotus Learning. And we just need to ask you to designate the superintendent as the board's designee under that agreement to select and authorize services and placement. And so tonight, under my business, I would ask you to consider that for that contract. And then secondly, we have occasionally a FISBIT claim for like vehicle damage from an accident or something like that, and we have one pending now where they're actually salvaging the vehicle. And once again, we'd ask you to authorize the superintendent to sign the title for FISBIT on those vehicle salvage type claims. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. All right, Section 12, Superintendent's Business.
Thank you, Madam Chair and School Board. I do have a little bit of information, and then three individuals that'll give a brief update on where we are in particular items. First of all, I do want to say it's the welcome back to school time, and we shared the last board meeting just thanking some of the folks that really worked hard over the course of the summer to be prepared to where we are today. But I also want to share, some of those behind the scenes folks. As you all know, bus drivers coming back right away, doubling routes sometimes, but just really want to thank our bus drivers, our custodians, who they did a fantastic job of getting the schools ready. And as we walked through the schools last week, it was really nice to see the shiny floors, the clean buildings. So I just want to thank them, but also the food services workers who worked over the course of the summer. And then they were prepared at the start of this year. I was over at Plu last week and just watching them get those little ones through the line so quickly. That was nice. And then also just the front office staff at our schools. And that is a area that sometimes they don't always get the credit that they deserve. But as you know, especially the last 2 weeks leading to the first day of school, there's so many folks that are coming in to register, to ask questions. Just want to thank all of those folks. And then, of course, not behind the scenes, just our teachers did a great job last week. Principals did a great job last week getting students into school and getting them acclimated. So I just want to say thank you there. Also, community support. As we know, we had the Stuff the Bus event, and from the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation to United Way and to countless others, thousands upon thousands of dollars of school supplies were collected all across this community, for our students and for our schools. So again, I think it's an area that we're blessed. I say it all the time. We are in a situation where our community supports our schools, maybe unlike many other areas. So just grateful. Our annual leadership huddle that we had this summer, from Florida Power and Light to Step One to Okaloosa Gas to Bit Wizards to Focus to Jacobs Titan and so many more, really supported our administrators in there. So again, just want to thank our community for the support that they give our schools. I want to give a few updates. So one's going to be on hiring. So I'm going to ask Dr. Hale to come up and kind of share with the board, keep you up to speed on where we are. 2, a little bit of an enrollment update, so specifically, again, where we are when it comes to student enrollment. And then we had a professional learning day on August 8th, which we'll share a little bit of information on, which was a fantastic day. So Dr. Hale?
Thank you, and good morning once again. I did want to go ahead and let you guys know where we are in terms of our hiring, where we've been, where we currently are, and then what we hope to accomplish as we move down the road here. As of this morning, we have hired 174 instructional employees over the course of this hiring season. And as you know, I like to always kind of update us as to the categories that they fit in. And just so for your information, of those 174, 45% of those, or 79, are of the temporary certificate category, which is a career changer, which is someone that has a bachelor's degree or is in some type of other certificated area where they can become a teacher and work on their certification under their temporary environment. These are also the ones where our consulting teachers specifically engage them. I'll talk a little bit about our consulting teachers in just a second, but we give them that very close mentorship. So 79 out of 174 are temporary certificate teachers. 49%, or let's see, that's 82, looks like 82 teachers are either coming to us from an education degree. There's 16 of those, or they are coming to us with experience and a certification. So 49% of that 174 are trained as teachers either through their previous teaching experience or through their education, which is an advantage over last year. Last year we were significantly, the balance scales were significantly tilted towards the completely inexperienced teachers, so we're excited about that. And the remaining 11 teachers that we've hired over the course of this hiring season are either through the district cert/CTE version that we have, or they're a licensed professional itinerant type or something like that that's not necessarily a teaching certificate type of a teacher. So 174, and the average years of experience of all of those that are coming in is almost 4 years. So 3.7 years is the average experience level of this group so far that we have been able to hire. Work does remain. Currently, we have 61 instructional positions advertised. 54 of those are school-based. And I do want to remind you that even though we have 54 school-based positions at this time, we carried between 48 and 52 all year last year. So this is very similar to where we were last year throughout the course of the year. But I do have some encouraging information that I'll share as we move through this presentation. Of the 54 school-based, 32 of them are Gen Ed and 22 are ESE. And just some numbers within the numbers. Of the 32 general education vacancies that we have out there, 23 of them are in elementary. And so that means that there are, looks like 9 that are either middle, high, or of a blended school, which is various grades or center schools. In terms of the areas of the county, I shared some information about that several weeks ago, but just wanted to update you on that breakdown. Our current vacancies, 31% of them are in the north, 13 in the central, and then 52% in the south. The south continues to be the area that we're going to continue to focus on with our recruitment efforts and our hiring efforts as we move through it. Of the ESE persuasion, there are 22 instructional positions that are posted. 22 is the exact number that we carried all year last year throughout the year. It never wavered. It never went up. It never went down from board meeting to board meeting. Of those ESE positions, 11 are elementary, and then 11 are in secondary or blended. We do also have 7 itinerant or alternative type instructional positions that are out there as well. That's pretty much the instructional vacancies that we have, but I would just offer some items of note just so that you know kind of some other things that are flavoring this season right now. We currently have 21 long-term subs that are in place at schools that will become certificated this year. So in my mind, that's 21 fewer vacancies. They are either most of the way there or they have a test to get or something that keeps them in the substitute environment, but they are on schedule to be certificated by the end of this year. Just so that you know about the busyness in HR, just last week, 1 week in August, we processed 73 sets of fingerprints through there. So we are being very diligent, not only about who we are hiring, but we are processing them very, very quickly and diligently. Other things of note that you might be interested in, we don't have the ability to grab exact numbers with regard to the military pathway or with the first responder pathway that were both new legislative actions within the last year, but I can tell you right now that I know for sure that there are 4 former first responders in this new teacher class and at least 2 military folks that are levying that because they've made that awareness to us. But again, that's a state level certification path and we really don't know, but I do know that we are being impacted both by our first responders and our military community. So in terms of instructional, before I move into the ed support realm, is there any questions on any of those numbers that you might have that I could look up or answer for you?
Well, just first of all, anyone that watches the national news or the local news knows that this is a nationwide and a local problem in terms of finding enough teachers for our students. But when you say that we have, was it 50 positions roughly that are open?
Yes, sir, 54 school-based positions.
Whenever I speak with this about folks in the public, they kind of understand. But then the next question is how are we covering those students? How are we covering those classes? So for the public's interest, I wondered if you might share some information about that.
Yes, sir, and I do have some more robust information, but just to answer the question right now, we are very, very blessed to not only have a community that supports our schools, but we work within our schools as well to get a lot of those positions covered on a daily basis. There's no telling how many substitutes we might have in schools, or how many vacancies we might have that are covered by substitutes. Put that aside, but we also have paraprofessionals that will step into these roles and fill these gaps while there's a teacher vacancy if they are able to. Not only that, but our principals have gotten very, very creative in doing things like combining classes, or moving some kids from one class to another to not upset the balance within the grade level, but to maybe transfer some kids away from a vacancy, for teachers that can handle those types of things. There's a whole lot of creative solutions that they're doing at the school level, that we're doing with substitutes, but we're also utilizing our ed support to fill these roles. And I would just say parenthetically, as I said, this vacancy scenario that we're in this year is not much different than the vacancy scenario that we were in last year, as we continued to progress from 8th to 7th and then 5th in the state in terms of our academic performance. So the support that we are getting inside our schools from our support folks, our substitutes in our community, and the creativity of our principals is really, really, we don't want to lean on that, because, calling it the new normal is maybe a little bit difficult and unfair for these principals that are having to make these decisions daily, but the simple fact is they've gotten really good at it.
I just want to add one thing, Dr. White, and Dr. Hale has hit this nicely. And so let's go back to this time last year in the school year. So we have, like Dr. Hale said, we had paraprofessionals covering classes. We have teachers combining classes maybe for 2 days or 3 days, and then the kids go back to the other classroom. We have substitutes in place. And I think all of us know, if we go back 10 years, we didn't necessarily have those types of dynamics. And what we want to have is each of our schools having a system to where there's the least amount of disruption for students. So one of the things I'm proud of Dr. Hale and his group, where you heard 21 of our substitutes are actually working towards becoming that teacher. So that's a lot of hard work from HR. And I'm going to ask Mr. Horton to expound just a little bit about what he's talked to our principals about. So if we can find a teacher right now that we believe is strong, and we can get them into the classroom, that's exactly what we're doing. But what we're not trying to do is reach at the same time. So Mr. Horton's been in collaboration with our principals on how we can handle our current situation, so we have kids in front of the best teachers possible. Mr. Horton, you want to elaborate on that? He does.
It is therapeutic for me to come back up here, so I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be here with the K.
I just asked superintendent, I said, do we have a
There's
mic? And I
there's a
see the microphone
there.
right
It
over
just
there.
feels too cabaret singer for me over there. So yes, sir, one of the things that we've been doing is working with principals and looking at their job openings. And the questions that are asked are, do you have a quality candidate that you believe will come in and do a good job in that particular classroom? If yes, then hire. Do you have a long-term sub, as Mr. Chambers mentioned, that is, a great friend of mine is a long-term sub at Choctaw this fall, Ms. Garland. Probably a very tenured math teacher, retired many years ago, and I went and saw her just the other day, and she's filling in a spot at Choctaw this fall for the first semester while they're struggling to fill a particular position. So I think you see instances of quality people coming in and stepping up and taking over those roles. If we don't believe, the principal and I together, that we've got a really strong candidate that we think will do justice by the kids, then we take a step back and look at other options. So it could be at an elementary school at this point in time. Maybe there were 5 openings in 2nd grade, and those 5 openings would put your class size average at 18. And they've got 4 really good candidates in that building, and they're struggling for the 5th. Then I think, in my experience in education, if I have 4 classrooms with 21 in it versus, and the teachers are all quality teachers and those kids are getting continuous, strong instruction, that's probably better in the long run than the 5th teacher where you maybe don't know exactly what the outcome will be. So those kind of conversations we have there, they happen individually. Decisions get made at the school level. The principal knows the faculty and knows the students and knows what the best outcome will be for those kids. So that's happening now. And we always start the school year, as you know, we're not in compliance with class size at this moment in time. A lot of the students that are in our system right now, enrollment system, are just names. And as we work through the first few days, week of school, we're making lots of phone calls for folks who were enrolled but didn't show up the first day. And so you know from having experience in the schools that some of those students end up coming, some of them end up having gone somewhere else and we remove them from the system. So class size is a process that you monitor throughout the fall. But I think this year, as much as ever before, there's a sense that we want to make sure we put the best and the quality people that we can put in those positions and be careful about filling with someone that we don't think will do a good job by the students. And with that, I have some enrollment information, but again, 2 days of school doesn't give anything, and so I don't want to put up a slide that says here's how many kids we have, but I'll give you a general sense. So the trend continues. Where there's growth overall, it's in the north. And where there's decrease in population, it's more in the south. So I would say that overall, the enrollment in the county is not growing at a fast rate. I think we said this last year. I think it would be categorized by me as flat overall compared to maybe other districts. So right now, about 32,000 students that include our the public charter schools that we've kind of taken their pulse and they're in our buildings, but it's a lot more to try to track down. Some schools are registering students still. I will say that in certain areas of the county, kindergarten enrollment did not live up to what we expected or projected, so we're trying to adjust and monitor. I will also mention to you that other than enrollment appearing flat in total, just a little quiz maybe for anyone who wants to take part. So our largest elementary school early on by enrollment, which one do we think it is?
Riverside.
So Mr. Bryant being our board member from Crestview, so Riverside, so it has not been our largest by enrollment, but this year is just a tiny bit over 1,000 and probably will settle in under that once we get through all of our warm body counts, but it has surpassed Antioch as the largest school. Antioch's numbers are relatively flat this year. Middle school, largest middle school in the district. You already answered once, you can't answer again.
Well,
Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
It's a trifecta for the North.
You want to
I-
say Ruckle, but
Ruckle is the second place. So the largest
River.
middle school in the county is
Shoal River.
Davidson.
Davidson.
Oh, Davidson.
Davidson. As of this morning, they were at 1187, and Ruckle following second behind at 1,074. And we have projected Ruckle's enrollment to be lower this year than it was last year, and in fact it is. We track the 5th grade classes in the central part of the county and kind of matriculate those through. So Ruckle's actually down, but still the second largest. And then the final question, Mr. Bryan, is which high school has the greatest enrollment at this point in time?
I think the North End gets the trifecta on this.
They
and that would be
do. So
Crestview.
Crestview High School's student count is just a little bit over 2,400 right now. And again, probably by the time we get to October, that number will settle in the 2,300 and change area. That's kind of traditionally what happens. Niceville's would be second at around 2,100. So I say that overall, the enrollment story right now, we've got another solid week to go, is flat with some areas of growth in the north end. And the little school that could in the south end, Elliott Point Elementary, is actually growing, and those things kind of happen in pockets throughout other parts of the district. So that's kind of where we are, but I think by the next board meeting, we'll be able to give you some official results. And then as board members know, none of this really counts until we get to our FTE count in October, the second week of October. That's when the state does an official attendance count of students to determine the funding level that comes to Okaloosa County and all districts in the state of Florida. So it's our job, as we see flat enrollment, to make sure that our expenditures for staff and other things is not going up. It needs to be commensurate with the enrollment.
So, Dr. Kelly, I have a question for Mr. Horton regarding the high school's class size.
Mhm.
So I know Mr. Chambers and myself, and I'm sure other board members get the same questions about the size of their high school. Of course, I get it all the time that the school is overcrowded. So the real numbers don't necessarily reflect the numbers that you're giving me or giving the board this morning, because let's be for real here. Seniors in today's world probably aren't at the school, but maybe one or two classes. So, could you kind of reflect on those numbers, kind of,
Yes,
where
sir.
we get those numbers from, and probably where we're actually
Yes,
at
sir.
the schools?
So in that example, if you use a 2,400 number, many of those upperclassmen are likely not there a full day, which is 7 periods at the high school level. So you may have a student who is off campus doing dual enrollment. You may have a student who's doing some virtual coursework or otherwise. So it's and we run those reports as well, number of students with fewer than 7 periods. Now, the state funds us for 6 periods of instruction based on our calendar. And so when a student's not there for at least 6 periods a day, then when we say that student is an enrolled student, they are, but they don't generate a full level of funding for a full-time student. So when I look at class size right now, schools are still kind of cleaning up their room numbers and locations. So when I look at it, I see some anomalies we're correcting. But right now, 3 of our 4 high schools today, based on all of the enrolled number, are sitting over class size over 25. So 3 of them are right now. We know that there are going to be a number of students that come off the rolls because they're just not there. So when I look at that class size number, I know that there's students that are not in attendance. The warm body count, that if you remember that as an administrator back in the days, we try to get a number of students who were here the first day of school, second day of school. That's because based on our old attendance procedures, we wouldn't mark a student absent until they actually showed up for a day. So you kind of left the grade book open and empty until that student showed up. Well, that's no longer the case. So Joe Peterson does a great job as our attendance administrator, and day 1 of school, you're either there or you're not. So we have a better sense of actually who was in the building on a given day, but I still want to let this week kind of roll through before we make that determination. But yes, sir, we've got several schools right now on the first day of school that are not class size compliant today, but that's probably a good thing, because if we were completely class size compliant right now, I would say to you that we probably used more, we've hired more teachers than we really needed, because that process works itself out. Now, there'll be some places where we'll add a section of this or a section of that, particularly at the high school level if we need to, but I think it's a process to be at class size when the state does that count.
I just want to make a remark to remind the public that our district is one of the few, and you may have an exact number, Mr. Chambers, that still offers a 7-period day, where the funding really hits at 6 periods. We have that 7th period that helps with a lot of our extracurricular or unique subjects that our students get the advantage. Do you have an idea of how many districts are still? I know it's very few. I'm not even sure in the Panhandle any others.
So I do not have actual data on that. I know in the past when we looked at it, there's not a lot. I'm saying it this way: there's not a lot of districts that necessarily offer the 7 periods that we do. And of course, we've made a concerted effort here in our county to make sure that we provide our students many different offerings to give them the best chance in terms of what they want to do as they go forward, whether that be college or whether that be workforce or the military.
Sure. And so that funding, so when we say a student unit is 6 periods, when we offer that extra, how do we do that? Just by adding them up, that extra period? How does that get
Right.
funding
So
in? Yeah.
right, so the funding cost of having the 7th period is determined by, and Julie has this piece, the number of in the high school level, the number of 7th period classes that we create or extra periods that teachers teach. And so it works it's a part of the whole general revenue fund that comes in, and it's offset. So we bring a balanced budget every year, so we were able to cover the cost of that extra offering for students throughout the process.
So ultimately, it is an advantage to our students to be here for that. right?
Well, and
Because
so
we
the
fund
student,
it.
the students who take 2 band periods,
Mhm.
the students who are in a career technical education track, and they're juniors and seniors and taking part in that program during the certifications, it gives them the opportunity within their schedule to do multiple things, which I think has always been important in the school district. And I think that the cost involved in providing that right now it's not been cost prohibitive to do that
Mhm.
for our students.
So they still have 28 opportunities to get 24 credits, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And then very specifically, so we get funded for 6 periods. And you go back a decade's worth or probably longer, we've made the decision here in Okaloosa when it comes to CTE, when it comes to band, chorus, theater, when it comes to ROTC, and many of the other different electives, we have taken the stance that we want to be a school district that provides our students a wealth of opportunities academically. And I think to date, that has been good for us.
Absolutely. I
And
think it's
just,
great.
if I could just speak as an old principal, that has really come to fruition because that it's allowed a school-based principal to decide in that period to provide enrichments or enhancements as needed by the students in that school year. So you could offer a variety of different things as your student body needed.
Mhm.
Well, a simple example of that, if the student's taking 4 core classes and they have a thought of maybe being college-bound, foreign language comes into play as a requirement in Florida. It could be that a student's a borderline ELA student that may need to be in an intensive reading class. So that's
So
6
get
periods right there, and
enhancement.
you've locked the student out of the ability to do band or chorus or even CT program. So that's been important.
Mhm.
Well, if I could just go back just for a moment to our need for teachers and instructors. I know that you guys worked strongly with our legislature this past session to provide some increased opportunities like extension of drop and those kinds of things that helped us to retain folks. And I feel certain that that'll be something that you'll work again this year with the legislature. I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is to, well, I have some ideas on how we can get more instructors and more teachers, but I really think that it would be good, and I know you will, if you'll work with the legislature again on your agenda for our delegation. Certainly, they must be hearing this from other districts in the state, and Mr. Bryan, I know that you are uniquely positioned to help us with that because I mean, it's a tough row to hoe when children don't have a regular teacher in their classroom, particularly even one that's certified. And when we talk about ESE classrooms, that presents another whole host of issues that we've all lived through before when we have IEPs and requirements and those kinds of things. So I know, again, you did a great job last time, and hopefully we can do something again to increase the ways that we can garner more instructors. Thank you.
And I think the state, Dr. White, looked at that from both sides because not only did they pick up on a lot of things that we suggested, I'm sure other districts did about allowing more teachers to teach longer and have less barriers to get into education. They went to the class size component and also struck out any language in class size compliance with regard to financial penalties for school districts for not meeting class size compliance. And
So could we just talk about that
Sure.
just for a second? So in the past, if a school district did not make class size, there was a financial penalty associated with that?
there was a financial penalty. The school districts have been able to appeal those findings, and in some cases, those appeals were upheld, and the schools district were deemed to have met class size due to the appeal. In some cases, not, and in those cases where the appeals were not upheld, the school districts were penalized financially, not overly significant, but penalized financially, and then those funds were then redistributed in a pro rata type format to the school districts that did meet class size. And so Okaloosa has benefited from a very small amount each year, but the legislature this past year in session eliminated the fines for not meeting class size. So if you could
does-
read into that what you
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, on the spot here. So that means then the legislature recognized that there weren't enough teachers, and class size was forcing districts to put children in classrooms with no certified teacher. And as a consequence of that, they've changed the legislation.
That's my finding too, after looking at the research and the law.
And I'll say that, and that seems to be very true. And as you know, as a school board, historically, we've worked very hard to meet class size. I mean, we've been diligent, and we'll continue to do so. However, you go back to what we're talking about. When you're in a situation in the state of Florida, in the nation, where you want to have the best teachers in front of students, we have to start asking ourselves a question. And do we want to hire just anybody? And I don't think we want to do that. We have a caliber of teacher in this county that we're all extremely proud of. And we want to keep that, going. And so if we have to make some adjustments, I think we'll be prepared to do so. But any time that we can hire a certified, excellent teacher, that's absolutely the goal, and that will continue to be the goal as we go forward. But with this change in legislation, I think there is a nod to understanding that in Florida, there's a teacher shortage, and that piece is real. And again, I think we have to make adjustments where we see fit and where it makes sense to do so. And again, I just want to stress it, and it's about making sure that we have high-quality teachers, which is what this school district is about, in front of students to impact their education in a very positive way.
Yeah, but all of it isn't on our level either, because the three of us here that are former classroom teachers, we all three were trained under a traditional setting, as were I think you, and that's at the college level. So I've not heard a whole lot about what's happening in our upper level institutions in the area of education majors, except that there's not many. And so I think we need to look at that level. It's not, so it's all fallen back on the school district, but we have that level too. What are our universities doing? What are our colleges of education doing to make some changes to get individuals into that? I'm not seeing a lot of that working either from the legislature trying to influence that or in the upper level. Even locally, I don't see that there's much.
And then you hit the nail on the head. I believe that this is the best profession that somebody can get into, being a teacher, being an educator. But the fact of the matter remains that our education programs, the numbers are going down in those programs. We are looking at a school district. We're looking at a new type of a CTE program for next year that we're looking to potentially offer, which is in essence teaching. So our high school kids who might be interested in becoming a teacher would have the ability to start that type of a program in high school, and then hopefully that'll lead them into a career path in education. I'm just saying right now, where we are, not just Okaloosa, just where we are in education today, if we do not start looking at things differently, I think we could get passed by. And I'll just say for Okaloosa, we're not going to do that. Value in teachers, value in educators, it's never been more important than where we are today.
You got it.
Thank you.
And Dr. Hale, I think, probably has a few other items to hit.
So, Dr. Kelly, as Dr. Hale comes up, I do have a question regarding the teachers. So you said a percentage of teachers that we're short of is like over 50% in the south end of the county.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I think that has a lot to do with, the cost of living compared to the south end versus the north end as far as, housing and all that. I mean, have y'all correlated any reason why it might be harder for us to find teachers on the south end? Now, I
Well-
know the north end was still 30%, but
Well, we've inspected a lot of different variables, and a specific correlation I couldn't point to, but I could say that, the population is growing in the north and declining in the south, and so the people that, just people, there's more people there, there's fewer people there for vacancies, for everything. So that's one piece. I would say that there are a lot of potential property issues that could be a part of that. We had a first-time homebuyers seminar back in the end of the last school year to try to recruit some of the new teachers into the area. We had some real estate experts talk about how some of these first-time homeowners could address some of these issues. And when we collected the data on the people that attended that, it was almost in thirds. So it wasn't necessarily about south, middle, or north. But I would also say, there's any number of other things from the positions with regard to Title I or ESE positions and all these other things. There doesn't seem to be any particular pattern that leads to one over the other, but we continue to look.
One of the things that comes to my mind, Mr. Bryant, as you bring that up, is just looking at these national retailers who have a whole body employed in their business to do forecasting and that kind of thing, and look at the numbers of those who have left the South End. So that tells you with those forecasters that's the general reason why that could be happening in that zone.
Well, and I know you all as a board, you're very interested in, just as the public is, what are we doing? And you've heard Dr. Dr. Hale hit a few things, and I'm extremely proud of what he and his group are doing. But you heard about home buyer seminars. When have we ever had to have a home buyer seminar? From our college fairs that HR goes to our own teacher fairs, to looking at an outside entity next year that other districts utilize to bring teachers into the county. So there's a lot of things that he and his group are doing that we didn't have to do 5 years ago, but I just appreciate the vision that Dr. Hale and HR has in terms of really working hard to get high quality teachers into Okaloosa. And this might be a transition, but he's also doing those same type of things on the ed support side.
Mhm. But once again, what he's saying about, Mr. Bryant brought up about housing and so forth, again, hits to other entities like the county commissioners and city boards and councils, not so much the school district. So, and I don't want to belabor the point, I know we have a lot to cover, but again, we need to be working with these entities to say, hey, it's to their advantage to have a good school system. Okay, it works that way. And we can't continue a good school system if we don't have employees of quality to hold it up.
And I will say to that point, myself and Mr. Horton, we're on a group that's kind of led by Ted Corcoran and some others. The military is a part of it. Business leaders across Okaloosa are part of it. Eglin and military leaders in terms of affordable housing and what can be done. So I am happy that as a county, this is something that we're looking at. I know that there are some plans for the future, and we wish that we had it right now. But I know that this is a topic of probably priority number one at the county level, which is affordable housing.
Great, thank you.
And I don't want to spend too much more of your time, but I did just want to update you on some support numbers as well. In addition to our 174 instructional positions that we've hired, we also have 165 new faces and new places with regard to the support people. That includes transfers and hires. Real busy over there in HR, and that does not include bus drivers. One of the things that I wanted to just point out about vacancies and bus drivers is we have 3 postings. But we have many different routes that might filter through those postings. We have hired some bus drivers, but we will continue to hire bus drivers as we continue to be approximately 30 routes below where we want to be. Now, the bus drivers did a great job. One of the things that our HR does every first day of school is we have someone designated to wait till 6 o'clock by the switchboard to see what all bus transportation phone calls come in. And other than one little a mishap in the north end, which the school did a great job of communicating. We got 0 phone calls about transportation on the first day. So that's a credit to the bus drivers and the people that manage those routes and things. They do yeoman's efforts just trying to fill those gaps along with the teachers that are driving some of those routes. And some of the substitutes that also drive some of those routes. We've gotten very creative in that as well. But just FYI, of the 165, that does not include the bus driver hires, and we have had a few. Just some other numbers, we've been able to place 12 custodians, 6 interpreters, 11 lunchroom monitors, 22 secretaries, but the overwhelming majority have been parapros. Over 80 parapros have been hired this summer, but that remains our biggest vacancy area as well. One of the things that I would acknowledge as a contributing factor to that is the fact that, as I said with our substitutes, many of last year's parapros have become certified and are now in classrooms. So there's a lot of internal growth, a lot of things that are going on to try to get these certified teachers into place. But work remains. We still have 28 total parapro positions that are posted right now, 23 of which are of the ESC variety, of all varieties. A lion's share seems to be one-on-ones as well. So that continues to be something that we look at to try to recruit for and gather. Again, bus drivers, continuing to look for custodians as well. There are 6 interpreters needed in the south end. We were able to hire 6 interpreters, but now we have 6 interpreter vacancies as well. So that is a growing need in the south end as well. Just for your information, and I'm going to go very quickly through this, but I did want you guys to understand some of the things that we've done for recruitment and or retention, and I'm just going to list them very quickly, and then I will take questions and get out of your hair. But our principals are doing a very, very good job creatively of utilizing their social media, their networking opportunities, their SAC, their PTOs, and other things to recruit for some of these efforts that are going on in their classroom. There's a reignition of volunteers as well. I don't know if you were able to pick up on this, but one of the legislative changes does enable volunteers to come back without having that 1-year waiting period after retirement, provided it's in certain categories. So there's a lot of that going on in schools as well. We're utilizing Indeed. We were at the Florida Fund for Minority Teachers Fair down in South Florida. We've been doing our social media posts as the schools have been, and we've been kind of doing some of that pay to boost, getting some of that handled as well. Of course, Hillary and Catherine have been doing a really good job of promoting, utilizing our different means of communication for the district to get our word out as well. Myself and Miss Maxey, we go and we visit Northwest Florida State twice a year. We go right into their education courses and we hand out cards and we take our little letters and say, if you want to work, come with us. We'll find you a spot. We do that as well. Of course, our local billboard advertising, our various job fairs like Mr. Chambers was pointing to, where every department, every school is represented. We had an Ed Support job fair not too long ago where our attendance more than doubled what it was last year. And of course, we go to the regional job fairs at the local colleges, Career Source, the Panhandle Job Fair, the Back to School Bash. But I see you guys are all wearing your high school colors today. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but Saturday there is a Hype on the Harbor event, which is more for fun, but HR is going to have a table there too. It's a big pep rally, but we're also going to have a, hey, if you like this, come see what it's like every day type of a situation. So every opportunity that we have to set a table and recruit, we're going to be doing that. Dr. White, you mentioned the drop extension. We have around 40 people that have taken advantage of that. Wow. That would not have otherwise been able to.
That's great. That's 40 more positions.
That's right. That's right. So that's exciting. Of course, our consulting teachers are doing a great job, and our PDCP, which is our internal certification program that we started last year, there's actually 71 active in there, 16 new enrollees, so we're trying to get them and keep them. The retention rate was very, very high from that program last year, keeping over 95% of the instructors that participated. So with all the retention efforts and the legislative changes and things like that, we're really, really focused, but we're going to continue to look for these good instructors, not just any instructor.
So, Madam Chair, I have one more. And I know you mentioned bus drivers, which in my mind caused me to think about, again, something that I was recently asked about, and that is school start times changing. And as I understand, that legislation takes effect in the year 25, 26? 26, 27. So we've got a couple of years. Organizationally, I can't imagine a more mammoth job than trying to reroute all those buses and changing the start times of schools. And I know that that's something that you'll want to do, and you will do early, so that moms and dads can make the arrangements that they'll have to do regarding daycare and all those kind of things that are, I guess, are going to affect the entire school district, preschool through grade 12. So I don't know what we'll find in terms of bus routes and bus drivers when we do that. Whether we need more, or if there are any ways of consolidating. And you guys may already have a plan. You may have already started on that, or maybe that's something you'll talk about in the future. But I've had a lot of folks, they think the start times are going to change next year because, the legislation's a little different. But just something there to think about, and maybe you guys could share some information as we move through this to kind of keep the public and the faculties and the staff and even the board aware of changes to those times and what areas and how are they going to do that and all that stuff.
And I appreciate that, Dr. White, and we will. I will just say this. So there's a few options. So with this legislation, it definitely it offers some challenges to school districts. So do you just flip everything, and high school goes at a later time? Elementary goes at an earlier time because that's the majority of our schools. Now, I'm not sure we want our elementary students out at bus stops that early. So then you start saying, do you push all school start times up some? Well, when you do that, the ones at the later tier, they could be starting school almost at 10 o'clock. Okay, so then you start looking at hiring. If we can hire 20 more bus drivers, 30 more bus drivers, 40 more bus drivers to get to 2 tiers. Because if you're at 2 tiers, then you're able to do this, right? But we're at a bus driver shortage right now. However, with all of that said, the law remains in effect. It's something that we'll definitely work towards. Mr. Horton right now already has a route coordinator this year who will be working through what that would look like as we go forward. So we're definitely on it, but it definitely offers challenges.
Dr. Kelly, if I can, and I believe the legislation is for secondary later school start time. It really wasn't affecting, it is going to affect elementary, but it was more geared for secondary. And then the other component of that was, and I just lost the train of thought there. I'll have to come back to it because I just lost the train of thought. That the legislation piece was, more geared for the secondary level, if I'm not mistaken. So.
And it is, absolutely. And of course, to accommodate that, someone's got to go on the front side. And when you have 23 of our 38 schools are elementary, that means there's going to be a number of elementary students, if we kept it the exact same way, would be going to school much earlier. More middle schools going earlier. And again, I think we'll follow the law, but we also need to make sure that we're keeping our kids as safe as possible.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of studies are done after that first year with regard to understanding that if they start later, they also get out later.
Right.
What does that do to after-school practices, those kids that do externships and internships, those kids who work, and those kinds of things.
Those kids that are involved in
Right.
sports.
Band, sports, all of those things.
So I lost my train of thought, but it came back. But I believe there's also going to be a pilot program for certain. There's going to be certain districts that are going to pilot this, or maybe
think
ahead of time.
I've seen in the legislation some pilot programs for even year-round school.
Yes.
So I'm not sure of the exact, I think that's what I saw as the pilot program. But to everyone's point here, I feel so weird. To everyone's point, I don't think this decision can be made in isolation, and then we just pronounce what's happening, although a lot of the restrictions are things that we may or may not be able to overcome. So I think as we move through this process, making sure we're transparent with the daycare providers, with the businesses, with the employers, and so that piece over, because we have 3 years, it involves that. I mean, you can start to list the scenarios. You can say, okay, our earliest high school started at 7. The law says they must now start no earlier than 8:30. So if you shift the entire route schedule 90 minutes forward, what does that do? What does it do to the end of the day? And so you start going through those scenarios, and that's exactly what, as Mr. Chambers said, the route coordinator piece, we're starting that right now, but we know that one of our limitations will be bus drivers and number of buses we can put on the road. It makes me think about the UPS piece, that trailer's an extra trailer behind, so they're doing doubles, and that's not how school buses operate. But getting those students to school is going to be the piece. But cannot make that decision in isolation. Got to get input from folks and come up with the one that best serves our community that we can feasibly accomplish.
And Dr. Kelly, real quick, there was Orange County School District actually had tried this a few years ago, and it only lasted a year. And Mr. Chambers, because he was out there in the schools, got us involved with these town hall meetings. I know a question at Crestview High School came up, and we asked the students straight up, how many of y'all would want to start later or start earlier? And I would say probably about 80% of them, if not more, said they like the schedule the way it is, because, and to Dr. Kelly's respect, they're talking about the after school activities. Well, normally when they would practice after school, they have that time frame there for a couple hours. But now it would be later, so probably they're going to have to do some of that in the morning, do practicing in the morning. But then also there's students that say it was going to affect their jobs, because a lot of these students do have after-school jobs, and most of the jobs require them to be there by 4 or 5 o'clock. But if they're getting out later and having to do later practices and things like that, they're not going to have time to work. So it is, I mean, again, anything that comes before us as far as law goes, I know we're going to do our best to make it happen, make it work, but there is going to be some consequences to this, and not to be the negative Nancy on this, but the reality of it is that there is going to be some consequences, and it's not going to be pretty. So.
Exactly. And when you think about those students who may be required then to go early for practice, whether it's band, football, or an academic team that they're working on and have to practice, that defeats the whole purpose of the theory, if you buy into it, that if they're able to sleep later, that one, they will sleep later, and two, that will improve their academic standing, which.
And we did ask them that. I mean, went to bed at 9 o'clock, and probably about 20%.
Not in high school. They're not
gonna
going to.
happen. Not
Plus,
gonna happen.
not only do they not want to, but then they have the burden of homework and
Right.
accelerated academics and those kinds of things. So remains to be seen, I suppose.
Yes, ma'am. And if you don't mind, I want to shift back to August 8th. As you know, the August 8th was our big district-wide professional development, and as Ms. Lightbourne comes forward to give you a brief update, I do want to say I was able to get to almost every professional learning that day. And I think what made me so proud, and Mrs. Lightbourne will talk more about the specifics, I was so proud of the smiles, the conversation. Teachers were in great spirits, and as we say all the time, everything's not perfect, but to be able to see the way that our teachers were carrying themselves, just from a standpoint of on the personal side, it was great to see. So much planning went into this that Ms. Lightbourne might not say, from her team, all the way from all the different locations to food trucks to presenters. This was very comparable to a national convention in terms of the different places, the different opportunities, and teachers had the ability to choose the professional learning that they wanted to go to. So I couldn't be more proud of Ms. Lightbourne and her group and the way that they conducted this, from the curriculum side to the student services to the ESE, and even prior to this, what Mrs. Duran and her group did in terms of getting new teachers prepared and up to speed. So so much has happened on the professional learning side over the last several weeks.
So we started with, I had principals calling and saying, we're getting all these flyers. Can you please narrow it down for us? So when we started to put it together, Denise actually created this map. So did a map quest of all of the places we would have professional development. So there were actually 11 different locations where professional development occurred in our county, which was really, really awesome. So from the central to the north and the south end. So really big. We had a lot of community partners that helped, Cross Point Church, Beachside Church, our high schools, and they were just phenomenal. The folks at those venues also were very, very helpful to us. So wanted you to see how many different places we actually had our presentations going on. As Mr. Chambers said, this was a conference style, so teachers had options. They could pick 5 different sessions to go to, and they went to sessions that meant the most to them, what they needed. So I think that was really helpful to teachers. They didn't have to go to certain things. Of course, there were some, like if you were a 6th grade math teacher, you had to go to this one particular session, but then the others you could choose. So I just wanted to show you a couple pictures and a couple themes at some of our areas. So this was elementary ELA. They used the Monopoly background and theme, and they called it Readopoly. There were lots of different opportunities for pictures at all of our venues for teachers to take, just put smiles on teachers' faces. They had takeaways when they left, things they could implement in their classroom right away. So very, very pleased. We had national presenters at many of the sessions, plus our own experts, our classroom teachers presented, as well as our specialists, program directors, and ELA coaches. Thank you. I'm trying to get through it all. This was elementary math at Cross Point Church. I know she had not even standing room, sitting room around in some areas only. 85 extra people actually showed up to her sessions, which was huge. And if you notice the balloons, does anybody know what that balloon says? It has a number 5. It's because we were 5th in the state this year, and as we shared with all the teachers, we're very pleased and happy to be 5th, but we'd like to be 4th next year and just keep one step at a time moving up.
And someone was so excited about that number 5 balloon that when we walked out at the end, it was gone.
This is our secondary social studies and ELA. Mr. Chambers was there. This was at Shoal River. Mr. Chambers did the keynote there. That was amazing to see that many teachers. You know, Shoal River's cafeteria, if you've been in there, is quite large. Well, it didn't look large on that day because every seat was filled. It was amazing and interactive, so that was fantastic. Again, they then moved to different locations once that part was over with, and did things that were important to them. We had some Striving to Thriving sessions, some things for teacher personal health too, that they really, really enjoyed. This was our secondary math and science. This was over at Beachside Church. They used if you've been in there, first of all, it's absolutely beautiful, phenomenal facility. And they used every nook and cranny. You can see in that one picture, those folks are in the kitchen area. They had people from the community who had tables up with giveaways in the center section. But there were, every little office had people in it when I walked through, which was pretty amazing. And this was, again, also opportunities for pictures. A lot of the schools wore their school shirts, and we were able to take group pictures, which was really, really fun for them. So I would just like to say I am beyond proud of what was accomplished. We had national presenters who said to the principals of those schools, wow, we've never seen this done by any district ever, and would Okaloosa share their blueprint? We'll see. So,
And I just wanted to add, so ESC, they were over at Choctaw Student Services, over here at EDGE, so with guidance counselors. But when you went around and you saw our ESC teachers, our paraprofessionals, and again, guidance counselors, again, making sure that we had professional development. And then up at the Crestview Community Center, CTE, also their whole department was there going through what they needed for them. So just a wonderful day of professional learning. And the last thing I have, just letting the board know, if you didn't know, it's hot outside. And Ms. Lamb and her group, also working with Mr. Horton, we put a lot of communication out to our schools. We've already done that. We already did that in the summer during sports time, but we also redoubled those efforts right now for sports, but also for PE, for recess, and guidelines. I've also talked to Mr. Hort, Mr. Meyer and his group about our maintenance department, bus drivers, and so forth. Just it's hot outside, so what we can do for students in terms of keeping them safe is first and foremost, but also for our employees as well. So I just wanted to give you that information. I know I've received a few emails about that. Buses, we still have a few remaining buses that are not air conditioned, but we're still working towards that. I spoke to a parent this morning, so we still have some buses coming in from last year's purchase. We're purchasing 15 more, and I think at that point we'll be close to all of our buses being air conditioned at that point.
That's super.
And those non-air conditioned buses are usually our shortest bus routes too. Am I correct?
That is my
Less than
understanding.
30 minutes.
Correct. And then all of our students with disabilities, those buses are air conditioned, but to your point, we do try to make those the shorter routes.
That's super.
Which I
Anything
believe
else?
is less than 30 minutes. Less than
So,
30 minutes. on the
That is it. I appreciate
That
it.
is Super. Thank you for those updates. And it was especially thrilling to hear from the cabaret over there. Good to see that you're on a stick cane and off your walker as you continue to improve. And that brings us to section 13, board members' announcements and requests for information. I think I'll start with Ms. Ivanchik today. I know she's excited.
I'm always excited. Yeah, I wanted to mention to your point that I visited one of those schools in my zone the day that everybody had to be back. And of course, you expect everybody to be excited, and they were. And then the other one, I went to the day before the first day of school. And what I saw, and I thought they would be like, are you kidding me? In fact, the principal asked me to say a few words, and I thought, they've probably heard from so many people. But what, to your point of still the smiles, still excited, after all they had been hearing for days and had to do, really says a lot about the employees we have in this district. And they were excited, but they were to the point of, okay, we've heard it, let's start school. You get to the point, you just want to get in there and get with those kids, so it was great. All right, a couple of things I wanted to bring out. I think many of us have followed it's called the Niceville Valpy Girls Softball Group, okay? Went to the World Series, and while they didn't win, they did very well. But I wanted to point out one student who is a Baker student in my zone. Addie St. John was the catcher, and congratulate her for her showing in that wonderful game. So shout out to Addie there. The other thing is the district is working with Northwest Florida State College for a college night, September 13th at the Raider Arena. And I know that's a ways away, but put it on your calendar. That's a great thing for students to be able to get out there and actually speak with representatives of colleges. And I would say, take not just your senior, but your sophomore or junior student and let them start thinking about what they want to do. So there's that. And then on a sad note, I want to send out some condolences to the Choctaw High School family. Choctaw's been particularly hit this year, losing a lot of key people. And in fact, 3 people this summer since school's gotten out, they've lost. And over the weekend, lost another, Mrs. Virginia Mayfield. She went by JC. started her career over at Meg's, and then when it switched to the ninth grade, she came over and taught English at Choctaw for many, many years and retired. Unfortunately, we lost her over the weekend. And again, Choctaw's been particularly hit with several individuals. And these individuals not only had long-term careers in our district and at Choctaw and maybe some other places as well, but they were unique individuals who gave a lot to students and who were, very well thought of, not only by students but by their peers. So condolences to the Choctaw family and certainly to Mrs. Mayfield's family. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. First of all, just wanted to say welcome back to all of our students and staff, and just I will tell you that in my 7 years I've been on this board, we all try to go and visit the schools as soon as we can. I know I had the opportunity on Thursday and Friday to visit 10 of the 11 schools that I represent. And I will just tell you that the feeling, like Ms. Ivanchek was saying when she got to talk to teachers and staff and everybody, it was just a great feeling amongst everybody coming back to school. It was nothing like I had seen in the last few years, obviously with all the other crazy things that were going on in our world. But just to see the smiles from parents, from students, from teachers, everybody, it was just a mellow experience. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't perfect, by no means, but it was just a great feeling overall. And I think that's a testament to the fact that, over the summer we've been communicating with our parents, with our staff, and just getting everybody excited for this school year. And I also think with, everything that's happened over the last few years, it was just, everybody was just kind of relieved that there was really nothing hindering the opening of schools this year, and it was just a great feeling. I know also at Crestview High School during the lunchtime, I spent 2 lunch periods there just to see how the new extension of the lunchroom went, and just the general demeanor of those students. It was just really just refreshing to see. They were all positive, coming and talking to staff in the lunchroom, just all of them excited to be here. So, just a testament to Mr. Chambers, to everybody in the school district to get the schools opened up. Again, we always say we're not perfect, but, I just felt on that particular day, those 2 days, it was just a different feeling than in the past. So I'm really excited. And I tell people all the time that we have the best school district in the state. Yeah, number 5, I'm good with that, but I'm not also good with that. I want us to be number 1. But, it was just a good feeling on those 2 days, and I look forward to the rest of the school year. A lot of great things that are going to be happening. And if you don't notice here, our big cheerleader over there, Miss Ivanchek, who keeps us all on our toes with spirit and all that, which we do appreciate. But I had to bring our middle school representatives here. So Davidson, largest middle school in the county. Crestview High School is, of course, the largest high school, but then also Shoal River. And I have to give a shout out to Ryan Gillis, who's the coach of Shoal River. This will be his last year coaching Shoal River Middle School, and there's a long legacy of him being at that school and coaching not just football, but he's done a lot of other things. But I know the other day when I had a chance to talk to him, he was excited about the new opportunities, but also, when it's in your blood, it's hard just to walk away from that. So good luck to Mr. Gillis, Coach Gillis, as he moves forward after coaching this year. But looking forward to Friday Night Lights like everybody else. Go Dogs.
Hey, did you eat lunch while you were there? You said you were there at lunch.
I did not, and I will say that the lunchroom staff there is, I'm partial to all the schools on the north end, of course, but I love our whole district. But that particular lunch staff there, they get those students in and out pretty quick, even though there was some glitches with the software with the, purchasing and all that. Those kids were in and out. There was no reason why those kids didn't have time to eat, and there was plenty of room in there too, so they weren't on top of each other. And they had pizza that day too. So I guess
And you passed it
I
up?
passed on pizza.
Oh, my goodness. You can make up for it. Thank you. Dr. White?
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And I'll have some more remarks tonight, but I did want to express appreciation to Channel 3 News for some of the coverage that they've done recently with the school district and Superintendent Chambers. I saw your interview, and I really appreciated Channel 3 going out into our schools and looking at some of the renovation that we've done, and I just felt like that they deserved a little credit for doing all that. So that's all I have today.
Absolutely. And I think all of us can be proud that our superintendent always speaks very eloquently and really highlights what's going on in our schools and our district. So thank you. And I'll just conclude with saying that, you know, we do have some creativity in our district, both within the schools, and an example is I'd like Ms. Savanchik to show the back of her jersey, because I think that this was something that Mr. Martello did.
Yep.
He gave all of his faculty members a new shirt.
Yep. Yep.
And on the back of it, you don't have to get up and show it, but we can talk about it.
Because it's
And on
kind
the
of cool.
on the back of it, he had every faculty member's name put on there as though they were a team player, and of course highlighting the 84.
Is the year I started in this district.
And every school employee's start
that.
date
Yep.
on the back of their jersey. So how creative was that?
Yep.
Thank you for being the model on that. And likewise, we have creative members in the community. So to your point about the donors and our having such supportive people in our community, I really appreciate Mike Carroll up in Crestview doing the pork for paper, collecting reams of paper for our schools. That was very creative as well. And so then to move on, I appreciate being allowed to go along with Superintendent Chambers and some of his staff for school visits. We were able to see 7 of our 8 schools in the central zone, and I too was just so excited to see everybody. I mean, we can brag on every element in this community, in the school district. I mean, the floors were clean, shiny, polished to perfection. The grounds were perfect. The paint was, trimmed up. And certainly the classrooms were so creative. The teachers were on fire, ready for their kids to come. It was just such an exciting day. So thank you for allowing me to tag along in that. And then just speaking of our high schools and speaking with Mr. Morello there at Niceville, so happy to brag that in every element of the new school grading item, all of those elements, Niceville High School increased in every ranking area. And of course, that's especially intriguing in a year when you have a brand new assessment and you really don't know how that's going to pan out until you see those checkers on the playing field one year. And so, especially in that year, they were excited to see how well they performed. And I just think as we celebrate the 5th level ranking in the state, that we have to recognize everybody from the parapros to the lunchroom monitors, everybody that touches a student. They make a student's day, and they may be the reason that student comes and performs that day. So certainly the classroom teachers and the administrators and our district staff who prepare those people to do their best in a challenging, changing time. So thank you to everyone. And that's all that I have.
Dr. Kelly?
Yes.
You don't have a countdown or anything?
No, but I'll have that for you tonight. I know you're waiting for that. I'll get it for you tonight. I didn't give it today because Miss Gardner's not here, and she looks for that too. So that brings us then to section 14, which would be the yellow card version of our public comment. And then, does anybody on the district staff have anything you want to add? Nothing? Jordan, anything from the union? Well, then that brings me to adjournment. Thank you all for your kind attendance.